He stood in the middle of a silent world, surrounded by the same days that kept repeating again and again. Nothing changed. Not because life was unfair, but because he kept choosing to wait. He waited for perfect timing. He waited for luck. He waited for signs that never appeared. Days passed like dust in the wind, and he watched them slip away without touching even a single one. Somewhere deep inside, he knew he was running out of excuses, yet he kept telling himself, tomorrow will be better. But tomorrow came dressed in the same clothes every time. What he did not see was how waiting had turned into a habit-soft, comfortable trap that held him tightly without him even noticing. Waiting felt safe. Waiting felt peaceful. But safety had a price. It slowly took away his fire, his hunger, and his courage. The more he waited, the more he started believing that he needed permission to move. That he needed approval to begin. That he was not ready to step into the life he secretly wanted. All the while, the world moved on without him. Faster and sharper than before. He remembered the dreams he once carried with pride. The plans he made. The hopes he whispered to himself during quiet nights. But dreams cannot survive without action. And he watched his own fade, like old ink on a forgotten page. He wanted change, but change requires a decision. And decisions demand courage. That was the one thing he kept locking away, thinking he needed to prepare a little more. But no amount of preparation could replace the simple power of deciding. There were days he blamed the world for holding him back. There were days he blamed time. And there were days he blamed himself. Yet deep down, the truth was simple: nothing stood in his way except the fear of moving forward. Fear of the unknown. Fear of failing. Fear of leaving the comfort of waiting and entering the storm of action. But storms are where strength is born. And he had avoided them all his life. As he stood there, he began to feel something change inside him. It was not loud. It was not dramatic. It was a quiet realization that nothing changes until he changes. The world was not going to hand him the perfect moment. There would never be a day with no fear, no risks, no doubts. The only real moment he had was the one right in front of him, the present, the now. He understood that waiting was not patience anymore, it was surrender. He breathed in deeply, as if pulling life back into his tired lungs. He looked ahead at a path he had ignored for years. It was rough and unclear, but it was real. It was alive. It was the path of action, of choice. And in that small, fragile instant, he made a promise to himself. A promise that he would no longer allow fear to choose for him. He would take back his power, step by step, choice by choice. Because the truth finally hit him. Destiny does not come to those who wait. It comes to those who decide. The first step was the hardest. Not because the ground was rough, but because his mind kept pulling him back to the old comfort of waiting. Every fear he had ever buried tried to rise again. Doubts whispered to him like ghosts from his past, soft, familiar, and dangerous. What if you fail? What if you are not ready? What if this path breaks you? These voices had controlled him for years, shaping his choices without him noticing. But this time, something inside him pushed back. He was tired of being ruled by a fear that gave nothing and took everything. He moved forward slowly at first, unsure if he was strong enough to keep going. The world did not suddenly open its doors for him. Nothing magical happened. The sky didn't shine brighter, and the path didn't get easier. But for the first time, he felt alive. Every small step carried a weight of truth that he was finally choosing his own life. Each moment of movement felt like breaking an invisible chain he had worn for too long. As he walked, he felt the pressure of years pressing against his back, trying to pull him into old habits. He remembered the times he watched others rise while he stood still. He remembered how jealousy burned in him because he knew he was capable of more, but he chose to stay silent. He remembered how he promised himself next time, but next time never came. And now, with every step, he realized that the only thing he ever lacked was the decision to begin. Everything else he could learn, fix, build, or fight for. But beginnings, those belonged to him alone. The world ahead looked uncertain. And that uncertainty felt both frightening and beautiful. It reminded him that life was still full of possibilities he had not touched. For the first time, he did not demand guarantees. He did not wait for someone to confirm that he was on the right path. He understood that true strength is not knowing the future, it is choosing to walk into it anyway. The unknown no longer felt like a threat. It felt like an open door. As he continued forward, he began to feel the weight of responsibility settle on his shoulders. But this weight was different from fear. It was the responsibility of owning his choices, of shaping his own path. He realized that waiting had protected him from responsibility, but it had also stolen his control. Now, action demanded that he face the truth of who he could become. And strangely, that truth felt powerful. He began to understand that every strong person he had admired had faced this same moment standing alone, uncertain, but choosing to move anyway. The more he walked, the more he began to see signs of life around him. Small things at first, a faint wind that felt new, a sense of direction he had never felt before. The world seemed to respond, not because it was easier now, but because he was finally present in it. He was no longer watching from the sidelines. He was a participant, a force. Someone willing to rise, even if he stumbled. He understood something remarkable. Progress does not come from giant leaps. It comes from choosing the next step, then the next, and then the next. He did not need to conquer the whole path in one day. He only needed to keep moving, and with every step, he felt the distance growing between the person he was and the person he was becoming. In this moment, he realized a powerful truth: he had wasted so much time waiting for courage, when courage had been waiting for him to act. Fear loses its strength the moment you face it. Doubt fades the moment you refuse to listen. And the future begins the moment you take your first step. By the time he looked back, the place where he used to stand felt distant, small, almost impossible to return to. He wasn't the same person anymore, and he would never be that person again, because once you start moving, you begin to understand that the world never belonged to those who waited. It always belonged to those who chose. The path ahead grew darker, but he did not slow down. Darkness used to frighten him. It used to convince him to turn back and settle for an easier road. But now, he understood something he had never realized before: darkness is not the end of the path. It is the beginning of becoming stronger. Every person who ever reached something great had walked through their own shadows. And now, it was his turn. The silence around him was heavy, but it felt like a space where his new self was forming, piece by piece, decision by decision. As he moved forward, memories he tried to forget began to rise. Not memories of failure, but memories of moments when he had a chance to change his life and he let them slip away. He remembered standing in front of opportunities that could have opened new doors. But he stepped back because he feared losing what little comfort he had. He remembered the days he said, "I'll try later," believing that later was guaranteed. But later was a lie he told himself to feel safe. Now, in the middle of this journey, he understood that safety had cost him years he would never get back. He kept walking, feeling the sharp sting of truth, but he did not hide from it. He welcomed it, because truth is painful, yet powerful. It shows you what you lost, but also what you can still save. The more he faced these truths, the more he felt something shift inside him. The fear that once controlled him began to shrink. The doubts that once held him like chains started to loosen. He realized that he had lived most of his life in a small circle built by excuses, fears, and comfort. But that circle was breaking now, cracking open with every step he took. As he walked deeper into the unknown, he started noticing things he never saw before. The darkness around him wasn't empty, it was full of signs, lessons, and hidden strength. Every difficult moment he faced on this path taught him something. Every challenge revealed a part of himself he didn't know existed. He began to understand that struggle is not a punishment, it is preparation. The world doesn't challenge weak people to break them, it challenges them to rebuild stronger. He remembered all the times he avoided discomfort because he believed he wasn't ready. But readiness doesn't come before action. It comes after. You grow into the person you need to be by moving, not by waiting. This truth hit him harder than anything. He realized he had waited for confidence, not knowing confidence is built on action. He waited for clarity, not knowing clarity appears only when you start walking. He waited for the perfect start, not knowing the start becomes perfect only after you take the first step. The path remained unpredictable. At times, the ground beneath him felt unstable, and he feared he might fall. But even when he stumbled, he didn't stop. Falling no longer felt like failure. It felt like learning. The moment he accepted that mistakes were part of his journey, he became unstoppable. He finally understood that success is not about avoiding mistakes, it's about refusing to stay down after one. In the middle of this darkness, something incredible began to happen. He started to trust himself. Not fully, not perfectly, but enough to keep going. Enough to believe that he deserved a future shaped by his own hands. That small spark of trust grew with each step, lighting his path slowly but surely. He no longer needed someone to tell him he was capable. He no longer needed signs from the world. He had become his own proof. For the first time in his life, he saw the value of the journey, not just the destination. Each silent night, each moment of fear, each breath of uncertainty was shaping him into a version of himself he had never known. A stronger version, a braver version, a version that could fight for what he wanted instead of standing still and wishing. the path began to brighten. Not with sudden light, but with a slow glow that rose from the choices he had made. It wasn't the world changing for him, it was him changing for the world. Every fear he had faced, every doubt he had pushed aside, had shaped him into someone he almost didn't recognize. Someone stronger, someone awake, someone who no longer waited for life to happen but stepped forward to claim what was his. And as he walked, he finally understood that the real battle had never been outside. It had always been inside him. He looked ahead and saw possibilities stretching like open land. They weren't wrapped in certainty, and they weren't promised, but they were real. For the first time, he felt ready to meet them. The weight he carried in the beginning, fear, regret, hesitation, had grown lighter, not because the problems disappeared, but because he learned to carry them differently. What was once fear was now awareness. What once felt like obstacles now looked like stepping stones for what he wanted to build. He remembered the version of himself that waited for signs, the version that wanted life to speak first before he dared to move. But life doesn't speak to those who stay still. Life speaks to those who take a step even when the ground shakes. And now, with each decision he made, life seemed to respond not with perfect outcomes, but with new doors and new strength. He realized that choosing is not about being certain. It's about believing you can handle whatever comes next. As he continued, he found something he had never expected to discover on this journey: peace. Not the quiet peace of comfort, but the powerful peace of movement. The peace that comes when you stop fighting your own potential. The peace that rises when you finally stop running from who you could be. He had lived years thinking peace came from avoiding risk, but now he knew the truth: real peace comes from stepping into your own power. There was a moment when he paused, not out of fear, but to look at how far he had come. The place he started from felt like a distant memory. It was strange how a single decision had changed the rhythm of his entire life. One step had turned into many. One choice had opened new strength. What once seemed impossible now looked reachable. And what once felt like a dream now felt like a goal he could touch if he kept moving forward. He thought about all the times he doubted himself. Those doubts felt small now, almost laughable. He realized that the only reason doubt had ever won was because he gave it power. The moment he stopped feeding it, the moment he stopped bowing to it, it shrank. Doubt was never stronger than him, it just spoke louder when he stood still. Now, its voice barely reached him. His new voice, his own voice, had grown louder, clearer, stronger. The journey ahead still carried challenges. He knew that there would be storms, setbacks, moments of weakness, but he no longer feared them. He welcomed them, because he now understood that storms shape people in ways sunny days never can. Challenges carve out strength, courage, and vision, and he was no longer the kind of person who ran from growth. He wanted it, he chased it, he demanded it from himself. He took a deep breath as the horizon widened before him. This was not the end of his story, it was the real beginning. A life built on choices, not chances. A future built on courage, not comfort. A journey shaped by action, not waiting. He understood now that waiting had kept him alive, but choosing would finally let him live. And as he stepped forward, fully owning the person he had become, a powerful truth rose inside him: life changes the moment you do. Not when you hope, not when you wish, but when you decide. He didn't look back again. There was nothing behind him worth returning to. The future belonged to the one who acted. And now, he had become that person, with steady steps, a stronger heart, and a mind no longer chained by fear. He walked into the world that was once out of reach. This time, he wasn't waiting. This time, he was choosing. He kept walking, and with every step, he discovered something new about himself, something he had never allowed to surface while he was stuck in the comfort of waiting. There was a strength hidden inside him all along, but it needed movement to wake up. Now that it was awake, it refused to go back to sleep. He began to feel a fire inside his chest, not the fire of anger or desperation, but the fire of purpose. A steady, controlled flame that pushed him forward and reminded him that he was finally living on his own terms. As the path stretched out before him, he noticed that it was no longer about reaching a destination. That used to be his obsession, finding the perfect goal, the perfect life, the perfect moment. But now, the journey itself felt meaningful. Every step held a lesson. Every challenge shaped him. Every setback revealed something he needed to learn. He realized that change is not a single grand event. It is a series of choices. Small ones, quiet ones, ones no one sees but him. Choices that add up until they create a new life. He began to understand that people don't fail because they are weak. They fail because they give up the moment things get uncomfortable. He had done that for years. The slightest difficulty pushed him back into waiting. But now, Discomfort didn't scare him. In fact, it motivated him. It told him he was growing. It told him he was breaking out of the version of himself that held him down for so long. Growth felt strange, unfamiliar, and sometimes painful, but it also felt alive. And he preferred pain with progress over comfort with regret. As he moved forward, he came across a moment of deep clarity. He realized that all those years he spent waiting were not wasted, they were preparation. Not preparation for success, but preparation for choice. He needed to feel the weight of regret to understand the value of action. He needed to feel the emptiness of standing still to appreciate the power of moving forward. Every mistake, every moment of hesitation, every lost opportunity had shaped him into someone finally ready to take control. He stopped for a moment. Not to rest but to reflect. The world around him felt wider now, almost limitless. It amazed him how different everything looked once he decided to live instead of wait. The same roads, the same horizons, the same challenges, they all looked new because he was new. He realized that the world is not fixed. It changes with the person you become. A weak mind sees walls. A growing mind sees paths. A brave mind sees opportunities hiding inside problems. He had spent years believing he needed permission to start. Permission from society, from people, from life itself. But now he understood the truth. No one was ever going to hand him permission. The world doesn't work like that. The only permission he ever needed was the one he gave himself. And now that he had given it, there was no going back. He could feel power in every decision, even the small ones. Decisions were no longer frightening, they were freeing. Each one felt like unlocking a new part of himself as he walked further. He began to imagine a future he had never dared to picture before. A future built not on fear, but on strength. A future where he wasn't chained to doubt or hesitation. A future where he created his own path, even if no one understood it at first. He wasn't chasing perfection anymore. He was chasing progress. And progress, he realized, is always available to those who keep moving. The sky above him slowly shifted. He didn't know if it signaled dawn or dusk, but it didn't matter. What mattered was that he finally felt aligned with his own life. Every piece of him, his mind, his heart, his will was moving in the same direction for the first time. That alignment gave him a kind of inner peace he had never felt before. Not the peace of stillness, but the peace of knowing he was finally becoming the person he was meant to be. He took another step, steady and sure. There were still fears inside him, still doubts whispering quietly, but they no longer controlled him. He carried them, but they didn't carry him. The difference was everything. He now understood that being brave doesn't mean not being afraid. It means choosing to move even when your voice shakes. And he was doing exactly that.